I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we are taking a look at a phenomenal autobiography. It is called The Early Years, a Memoir. It is written by Rachel G. Carrington, and it tells a wonderful story about a woman who sacrificed a lot, but got a lot in return as well. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Well, I'm very happy to be on Spotlight.
Our
I hope
pleasure. Our pleasure. You've had quite a life. You are the youngest of 11 children, I believe, growing up
the
pretty poor in
oldest,
Kentucky, right?
the oldest of 11
Oh, you're the
children.
oldest. Okay. Which is probably
Yeah,
even harder because then you're helping raise the other 10, right?
it. They had to learn by me, so I had it rough. But
Sure.
my parents, by the time the 11th one came along, she had all kinds of privileges that early teens I had none.
Exactly. Exactly. That's how it goes. Family's sometimes better off by the time the little one is older, as
And they
opposed to,
learn.
yeah,
They
and they
learn.
learn from each other. That's for
Okay.
sure. So, for the folks at home, tell them a little bit what your book is all about.
Well, my book is when I was in school, all my dreams were to be a teacher.
Mm,
And so I worked hard to try to keep my grades high and everything in order to be a teacher. But something happened. And I even got a scholarship that would pay for it. We were very poor.
mm,
I got a scholarship that would pay the full load. But something happened,
mm.
put me down a different path altogether. I met a young man returning from service, World War II, and I didn't want to go away from him. And after that, I fell in love at a
Right.
very young age, but but it must have been okay because we made it for 62 years
Wow.
before he died.
Amazing.
Yes,
Amazing.
but
That's
I never looked back. I mean, I was able to take a lot of coursework to get what I wanted as far as learning, but not
mhm,
preparing to be a teacher any longer after I met him.
right.
So anyway, and the book, it came because he was constantly saying, "You ought to write a book.
Mhm,
You We've had such a wonderful life. You ought to write a book and let the kids know what kind of life we had." Well, that was my main purpose, get one for the children. And we had 7 children.
wow.
So that's what I wanted to do. And I contacted the publishing company because I knew they could tell me how to get it in book form, not to publish. I never thought of publishing. And they contacted me and they said, "Why don't you want this published? We think it would go well."
Mm,
Well, it took me a little while to decide, but I decided to go ahead with it. And what you've seen is the results.
well, it's
I
a
tried to
wonderful book. Go
tell
ahead.
it like our life was, so the kids would know. I mean, we were strict on them, but not strict like my parents were when I was growing up. But anyway, my book was not in. When I first wrote it, it was just like a listing of what I did in my life. That's
Mm,
not what I wanted. I wanted a story. So I went back and rewrote it using the same facts, but rewrote it so it would be a story that would be keep them interested rather than reading a list of what we did. But
absolutely.
and lots of people that have read the book, my readers in their reviews, do mention the fact that it's inspirational. I never thought of it as being inspirational. Uh, I was just thinking of the family, the love we had. In the book that I have published already, that's just the beginning. But I've developed macular degeneration, and I can't see well enough to do much as far as writing.
Mm.
Besides which, I'm getting old enough, I don't have the memory I once had. So I'm not sure that it's going to be able to go any further. I've got a second one started, got it, all the material in it, but it's just not interesting to me. And I've
Right.
got to get it so it will grab someone's interest. One of my
Absolutely.
daughters read it and she said, "Mom, you should do it like you did the other one. Just make it a story rather than a report of some kind."
Right. Right.
So,
But maybe that's the starting point. You make a list of all the significant events in your life, and then you develop the story around that. But your first book, The Early Years, is a wonderful book, and it reads like a novel, even though it's your true story. And I think it is inspiring to people because all of us kind of have obstacles to overcome one way or another as they're growing up. And you were able to rise above what you describe as poverty and find plenty, which was very nice. Tell us a little bit about what life was like growing up in Kentucky back when you were just a little girl.
well, we were just coming out of the Great Depression when I was born, and it was between the Depression and the World War II. So we didn't actually. It was hard to find jobs because when World War II was over, when I was getting ready to either go into college or look for a job, couldn't find them because they were still taking back the service people, filling the
Mm,
positions. And everyone was having that same problem. I said we were poor. We weren't really poor, I guess, but everyone was in the same shape. So it made us, if we were poor, we were all poor. That's what
right.
I'm saying. And of course, there were more fortunate ones in our family. One of the things was my dad had a good job. He
Hmm.
worked on the railroad, which was a steady job all through everything, difficulties that people were having. Uh, but it was just we couldn't, we didn't have money to throw away,
Right.
and we shouldn't be. And we were kind of that way all of our lives, even though we had plenty of money.
Right.
Once we got to the place where my husband was a hard worker. He had so many different jobs going. He was a builder. He was a
Mm,
farmer. He worked for General Electric Company for years as a um, maintenance repairman. So he didn't get a lot of salary where he
mhm.
worked, but he still was able to get a lot of overtime. And my son once said, Dad's like King Midas. Everything he touches turns into gold because he was just hardworking. He would make. He had no education to amount to anything. He had the fifth grade, but he had a mathematical mind. He could
Right.
figure depth and width, and he could figure like he was building a concrete ramp for a barn that we had, and he
Mm,
wanted to figure out how much concrete that it would take to build that ramp. And he gave me the measurements. He'd always have me check it in the right way, by multiplying the three dimensions. But he had it figured in his head. And I gave him a figure, and he says, "Oh, no, you're wrong." And I said, "No, I'm right. I checked my figures."
yeah.
"No, you're way off," he said. And I thought, my goodness. I looked and I had put the decimal in the wrong place. And I had much more concrete than he would need. I mean, he knew, he just had that. And that's the way he lived his life. He was well ahead because he just could figure things out and go ahead and do it. And he didn't mind work. In fact, he had a job that in a strip mines, coal strip mines.
Mm-hmm.
He worked that job. Then they needed a repairman. They hired him as a repairman, but he kept both jobs. He did the hauling during the day, repairing at night from the strip mines. And he wasn't satisfied with just making a little money. He wanted to make enough so the family could have what we needed, and so that we could at least have a life. My kids picked up the same habits that he did, and they've done well in their life.
Wonderful. Well, your husband really was part of the greatest generation. I mean, they knew what sacrifice was, they knew what hard work was, they knew what commitment was, loyalty was. It's wonderful to hear those values and read about them in your book, because they are inspiring, because so many people have forgotten what hard work really is. Like your husband working at a strip mine, and that's just one of his jobs, right?
Yeah, that was just one. That's correct. Yeah. And he had 2 jobs there. So
amazing. Now you were busy with 7 children. Did you work during your
not until the last one was in school.
Gotcha.
The youngest one was in the 1st grade. I got a job, and then I retired at a Board of Education in Hamilton, Ohio. So yes, I did work for 28 years, retired from there.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I think you said your father worked for the railroad. My grandfather worked for the Pullman Company during the Depression, and working for the railroad was a great thing back then. It was steady work. They had enough money where somebody came knocking at the door looking for some food, they cooked them breakfast or whatever. I mean, it was such a different world back then of neighbor helping neighbor. I'm sure you experienced that growing up, that your family was always there to help out their neighbors and people in the community.
And we had, speaking of the railroad, we had hobos that would come from the railroad, go around to the homes, and people would cook them meals.
Right.
Even though we were poor enough that we had, thank heaven, my father had, his mother lived in the country, and she kept us supplied with eggs and meat, which helped a lot. And we would use a lot of that to feed the homeless. I mean, it wasn't homeless. It was different people who needed money.
People down on their luck. They just, it was a depression. They couldn't find work. And you guys were blessed. I mean, considering your parents were raising 11 children, the fact that you said your grandmother had chickens and lived in the country and was able to provide those eggs, that helps quite a bit, I'm sure.
Yes, it did. And vegetables to can. And she helped a lot. She just had an excessive amount of food. She didn't want it to go to waste, and she made sure we got it.
Yeah.
So it was rough, but it was good.
Yeah. I'm sure the book is a real delight. You obviously have a large family between all your siblings and all your children. I mean, just getting the book out to them is a nice piece of their family history for them to have, treasure, read about.
Yes, they all treasure it, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And they're hoping for the second.
Well, I got a feeling you'll get that second book done. It might take you a little longer.
I may find a way.
You'll find a way, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the name of the book is The Early Years, a Memoir. It is written by Rachel Carrington. It's available online. Her website is on your screen right now. It's a wonderful read. It transports you back to a different time, just like we've been chatting about here. A time when life was sometimes harder, but in many ways better. Rachel Carrington, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Okay, I'm very happy to have joined to talk with you, and good luck with with helping me.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.